And we are recording with Miss Judyth Very Baker, who dated none other than Lee Harvey Oswald. But you asked me to introduce myself to you. So I'm Tommy Carrigan. I'm 32. Uh, like you, I was on the track to be a doctor. I got into medical school in 2014. Decided not to go. I just wasn't happy. And through a lot of ups and downs in life, in 2019, I started this podcast in a laptop above my parents' garage. And for about 3 years and almost a month, I've been doing this every day. This is episode 1039.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I've interviewed everyone under the sun. And those interviews have resulted in me getting banned from YouTube and Twitter and iTunes and a whole lot of Reddit and a whole lot of other webs. I don't care anymore. I just don't pay attention to it. But that's what I do. I talk to anyone and everyone. I try to keep an open mind about everything. And really, I just try to have fun. So I hope that suffices for an introduction for you.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you're having fun. It's been a pretty tough road for me. I wish it were more fun, but I
For
guess
my
the worst.
could you introduce yourself for my listeners?
Okay. Yes. I also was going to be a doctor. It's a long story. It's basically in my book, Lee Harvey Oswald and Me, that'll be coming out next month.
Oh,
Finally, this book was sabotaged. It's taken 2 years to get out because the printers who printed it printed half of it upside down.
okay.
And if you open the book, it fell apart, and we had to force them to reprint. Well, they're taking their sweet time. It was supposed to be finished in October. We're supposed to have them sometime in January, and I think they will this time deliver, because if they don't, we'll take them to court.
Good. Good.
That's we have to.
Well,
2 years without this book being coming out, and it's a hardcover. And anybody who wants to get this book, just you go to JFK Conference at yahoo.com and pay PayPal $42. Sounds like a lot of money, but that includes shipping. And it's a heavy book over, see, it's 600 pages basically. Has 16 color pages in it. Okay.
oh wow.
Yeah. And it's printed right now. And it's over my dead body practically to do it right. But it's there with all the new information, because I was recruited by the CIA. I was very young and didn't understand. I was a patriot. Like so many people my age, we trusted our government back then. I'm on record from many sources, newspaper articles, and my training of having given lung cancer to germ-free mice in record time, faster than I gave lung cancer to mice while in high school, faster than anybody had ever done it, period. And because of that, I received a lot of attention, especially because it was lung cancer, from three very important doctors. Dr. Harold Deal, who was the vice president of the American Cancer Society, Dr. George E. Moore, who was the director of the oldest cancer research institute, which was Roswell Park in Buffalo, New York, head of 8,000 people, researchers. He personally invited me to work in his own lab, to give you an idea. And I was 18, okay? 17 actually at the time when I was invited. And on top of all of this, there's a third gentleman. His name is Dr. Alton J. Oxner of Oxner Clinic. He and the other two doctors had been going around the country trying to convince people not to smoke, and they were testifying at trials, all three of them. Now, when I induced cancer in the mice I'm talking about, with the help of Dr. James Renier, who provided the germ-free mice, and I knew him because he was at Notre Dame. I used to live on top of Notre Dame. My family knew him personally. so that I had different connections. I also rated with highest IQ in the state of Florida because Sputnik came out and they did all these tests. And so CIA actually came and visited me. It's even in the newspaper. His name was Knut Nicholson, apparently a fake name because we can't find that name. At any rate, I ended up getting all kinds of equipment. I was sent to learn Russian. This is the Cold War, you know. I actually was dating a important refugee and got deeply involved in the anti-Castro movement because the man I dated, the young man, handsome young man like you, he was the son of Cuba's finance minister for Castro, who was Rufo Lopez Fresquet. His name was on all of the money. And here I'm dating his son, Tony. And there are pictures of us together. And he went to all my parties and we had a great time. We got very close. It's a long story. It's in my book. But that was the beginning. I needed, at the time that I did finally induce cancer, you have to understand, I started out first by inventing an advanced way to get magnesium out of seawater. And that got the military interested in me. I went to the International Science Fair the same time as a young man who they made a movie out of, who he met Werner von Braun, so did I. same place.
You met him?
Oh, yeah.
That's wild.
Oh, I met all these important people, including some military officers who, because I knew McKinley Cantor in Sarasota, he wrote the first biography of Curtis LeMay.
I know all about Curtis LeMay.
Well, I learned all about Curtis LeMay because here I'm McKinley Cantor liked my writing. And so he invited me I would bring stuff and he would critique it. Then he had me carry he had a tape recorder and he would dictate into the tape recorder to have written down, and he's writing the book about Curtis LeMay. So I got to learn all kinds of things about Curtis LeMay. And he sent a poem, McKinley Cantor did, to Curtis LeMay that I had written. And it was called First Lady. It was about the American flag. I was all so patriotic. So it was like, oh, precious dear First Lady, to thee do we give our love, for you are the flag of the United States, streaming on high above. So that's how that ended. So when I go to the International Science Fair, and they were interested in Rob Strom, who had his exhibit right next to mine. Now, Rob Strom won the $64,000 question, which is like $1 million today, because he even earned more than that, something like 800,000 in today's money. And we were talking and all that, but he had some leftist notions. And when the generals and everybody were interviewing him, I mean, all these military officers, they didn't like what they heard. And one of them turned to me and said, well, young lady, how do you feel about your country? And I said, well, I recited part of the poem, and they knew the poem because it had been passed around. So they said, come on, young lady, with us. We got some others, and with a number of others. I got special tour of all kinds of important scientists, got connected with Oak Ridge, and all this is on record, and with doctors who were trained at Oak Ridge, and materials sent to me. Also, the Walter Reed Institute for Research, WRAIR, sent me exotic chemicals to use, and one part of the letter says, well, we're doing the same work you're doing here on hypothermia in mice. Oh, wow. I was doing the same work they were. It's right in the letter. And to make a long story short, when I induced this lung cancer, then I had assistance, in other words, from the people actually were so frightened of what I was doing at my school that they moved my lab out of the building because they saw the big lumps of cancer on the mice and things like that. So I ended up, they made a laboratory for me under the stadium, far, far away, you know. And so I was having a difficulty now because I had advanced my work so much that the doctors I was working with could no longer assess it. What am I going to do? Well, the I was given information that a very important meeting was being held of the top scientists in the United States who were working in cancer research. And they had brought in science writers from all over the country and even the world, including 6 Nobel Prize winners. And they were only 26 miles away. So how am I going to get there? I was not getting along with my parents. That's another story. My dad wanted me to run his business. He didn't want me to become a scientist and so on. And so we weren't getting along. I couldn't count on them. Besides, they were not getting, my dad was going to be a rocket scientist. And make a long story short, my mother refused to be locked up behind over at Los Alamos or Sandia, any of that. And it broke my father's heart. He was an excellent engineer, and he was going to be working on the Redstone rocket project.
Okay.
My mother refused to allow us to move there. And we tried to get in at Livermore. It's a long story, but the short of it is he retired. He had a number of different patents because he worked with Mr. Adler in Chicago, who was co-inventor of the remote for TVs.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually invented a lot of things that Mr. Adler took credit for, but Mr. Adler was very kindly gave him all the money of the royalties, but he took credit for and just that's what Thomas Edison did with his people too.
Yep, for
Same
Tesla.
thing. So my dad was able to retire when he was like 32 to Florida, and then he just drank and whittled his life away. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But because of this, the relationship between us soured up because he wanted me to run his business so he could just go fishing all the time. And he said, "You're just a girl. Nothing will come of you anyway." And in a way, he's right, because like I was the first girl. I said this magnesium thing that I invented. Nothing, and that's on top of my cancer research. It actually it won the top physics and physical sciences award for the state of Florida. So I was sent to the International Science Fair, but they never had a girl win it before. And for example, they had a prize of I think it was 10 days or so on a wonderful Navy ship. I think it doesn't matter what kind it was. It was an aircraft carrier of some kind, but because I was a girl, I wasn't allowed.
Oh.
And these impediments kept happening, as a matter of fact. And but it didn't matter. I won at the Science Telesearch too, but there was just some discrimination. I won't go into all that. The long and the short of it is, I could not. The doctors that I was working with, as advanced as they weren't in this special symposium that was going on in St. Petersburg, 26 miles away. So I decided to hitchhike there with all my papers and all my stuff. And how? Well, I couldn't drive, I was 17, and what do I do? So I walked as far as I could. I saw a bus coming that was going to go across the skyway there. So I pulled my skirt up and showed my leg, and he stopped.
Hey, man, whatever works.
Oh, it did. So he kindly told me where to get off and everything, and we had a great time talking. And fortunately, because I get lost going around the corner, I could even see the doctor's motel from there. It was great. So I walk in. It was during a break, and people walking around, and they're all in suits, or they're in white coats, and they're police. And then there's me.
Yeah.
I'm 5 feet, almost 5'3". I have a high school press pass. This is not going to work so well. I actually squeezed between two big guys going in as the doors were closing, and they didn't see me. But then everybody sat down, and there I was, and everybody looked at me. Oh boy. Here came the police. They're going to get rid of me.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, as they're coming to pull me out of my seat, at the person sitting at the top of the stage where they were putting on a slideshow and everything like that, he said, "Wait a minute." He said, "Who are you, young lady?" And I said, "I have something to show you." He said, "Come here." So I showed him the stack. And he said, sit down. Okay. I sat next to his wife. That man was asked me to sit down was Dr. Deal, the vice president of research, cancer research for the American Cancer Society. The president before him happened to be Dr. Alton Oxner, by the way. So, you know, they knew, they were very good friends. Oxner was not there at the moment, but as I sat down, I learned that the person who asked Dr. Deal to stop the police from ejecting me, sitting next to him was Sir Robert Robinson, a Nobel Prize winner in chemistry. And he was the one that was intrigued. So then at lunch break, oh boy, I was writing notes down and everything, you know. So they looked at my thing. When they found out what I claimed, they really couldn't believe it. So they had to go inspect things overnight and everything that I had. Dr. George Moore was also a pilot. So he flew over and got Dr. Oxner, their good friend, and from New Orleans and flew him over overnight. So now we have 3 doctors, Dr. Moore, Dr. Oxner, and Dr. Deal. They're the #1 cancer research specialists in the United States, absolutely. And with so much power and everything. And I am trembling in my seat, I want to tell you, and all that. And the hard part, well, the good part was is that another Nobel Prize winner was also got interested in me. His name was Dr. Harold Urey. We were both born in Indiana, and he had fond memories of Indiana, and turned out we knew some of the same people because of Notre Dame, you know, and everything. I was born in South Bend, Indiana, which is right on top of Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. My Hungarian family was very interested in Notre Dame and donated land to them and so on. Well, all of this registered with him. And to make a long story short, they went to my school and talked to Dr. My instructor, my main instructor was Colonel Philip Doyle. Colonel, you hear that? Lots of military people were behind what I was doing. All right. Colonel Doyle was from West Point and was just a premier science teacher as well, you know, instructor and everything. So I'm waiting, what's going to happen to me? What's going to happen? Because they looked at my stuff and they agreed. After looking at everything, I indeed had given mice lung cancer with cigarette products, which is just what they wanted to prove when they were traveling around the country together. And here I had done it in 7 days with germ-free mice. And like Dr. Moore said, he said, it was the devil for us to get those mice. How did you get them? I said, well, I knew Dr. Rainier. You knew Dr. Rainier? I said, well, my Hungarian family knew Dr. Rainier. You know, his family's from Austria, and we're down there near Vienna, a Hungarian family, my grandmother and all. I knew him. And he was so kind to give me germ-free mice. I killed the first 4 little pup I got. No, they're very hard to keep alive. They have to be in completely sterile chambers. Mm-hmm. You have to sterilize their food. We didn't know that much about vitamins at the time. I could go on and on with the trouble we had. But anyway, I did it. And the 4 things, there was all the proof. So I have a little thing to say. I was in the newspaper a lot. It went all over the country and stuff like that. And also, they kept giving me IQ tests and things, and so on. It was just part of it, you know. I got real tired of that. So one day, this is going on at the same time. I was able to get into the medical libraries, and I found out all the answers to one of the IQ tests. So I scored 200 IQ, and they thought I was the most brilliant. I know, I said I cheated. I was so tired of it. I mean, you know, they're testing you and testing. I mean, you know, stop it, because you memorize it. I mean, my IQ wasn't any 170, 160. It wasn't 175, 190. It's just because they keep giving you a test, you get more tests, you know, savvy. That's all. Yeah. At any rate, it doesn't even measure ability to live life, or any of the other things. There's so much more. But to continue, the bottom line is that I had figured out a way to destroy the immune system of the germ-free mice. They had no immune system, and it turned out that they had somehow contracted a virus, and they closed my lab down. And I was not able to go to the state science fair with my prize mice or anything. So there's nothing I could do about that. But even though all that evaporated, my hopes to, go again to the International Science Fair, the bottom line is that instead I was invited to work in Dr. Moore's own private lab. He only had 3 other people working there, 2 doctors and a brilliant young man called Art, young student like me. He was 2 years older than her. So anyway, I go there, and my gosh, the work and the things we did. But to be brief, I learned how to handle the SV40 monkey virus and many others, the friend viruses, Coxsackie, you name them. That was with Dr. James T. Grace. Also with Dr. Moran, went to seminars, and in his mind, he didn't like me very much. That there's a long story behind that. It's in the book. Basically, if you arrive late and you miss the IQ test, which I didn't want to take, he didn't like that, and that's the way that went. But the good and the bad. The good is that I helped develop the RPMI 1640 formula, still being used today. At that time, it wasn't going to be released for a few more years. But this formula grows cancer faster than anything else, certain types of cancer that we were interested in. The good news about that is Dr. George Moore and Dr. Alton Oxner were good friends, and Oxner was fascinated because he had a bad experience with the polio vaccine. It's called the Cutter incident. In the 50s, when they were developing the polio vaccine, he trusted his doctors. He's a doctor himself, right? So when the Cutter Labs came out with a really great polio vaccine, he had his own grandchildren come into the clinic and brought in the press and jabbed them, inoculated them with this polio vaccine. 11 days later, his grandson, who was a little 2-year-old, died.
Oh, jeez.
And his granddaughter got polio. And I'll never forget his telling me, I trusted my doctors. I had to think twice. Why did I trust my doctors? Now, this man was against Castro like you would not believe. Mm-hmm. You have to understand where I'm coming from. In high school, I said I dated Tony Lopez Fresquet. His mother's American. They had to flee because of anti-American sentiment. And also Operation Peter Pan was instituted, started at Rostow Academy, where Tony, his brother Vince, and so on were attending. And only days after they left, Operation Peter Pan started with the CIA. And they could have been arrested and incarcerated, who knows what, just by attending Ruston University, their academy. So they couldn't see their dad. They were very worried about their dad. He did get out. It turned out he was CIA. Okay. So he got replaced. But in the meantime, I learned an awful lot about Castro. And like 2 of Tony's friends had been tortured. They had Castro's people hung them up and used blowtorches under their arms and at their genitals. Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah. Well, so I was not very friendly thoughts about Fidel Castro.
Sure.
Okay. I had plenty of firsthand stories and stuff like that. So anybody that says, oh, how could you want to go and kill Castro? They have to understand the times. they were a heck of a lot worse than Ukraine and Putin or anything like that. We're talking about, this is 90 miles from where I lived in Florida. Yeah. I saw the tanks rolling down. I heard the horror stories. And of course, on top of this, I had these close friends. And all of this would come to play its role in my life. So here I am. Anyway, I invited to go to Buffalo, New York, and yeah, my picture got in the paper, even in Buffalo. Okay, it's in the book, along with 6 others. There were 86. They chose the 6 that they thought were the top people there, and that was exciting and all that. My grandma died of cancer. My aunt suffered all her life because of cancer. Some of my best friends had cancer, and so on and so forth. And it meant a lot to me that my best friend, Georgiana Watkins, who was the local head of the American Cancer Society for the Suncoast, the area there, the American Cancer, was dying of cancer herself. And I wanted so much to do something about it. I memorized this formula, and it turned out that such a difficult formula to memorize that nobody else had done it, and it was secret. But of course, Dr. Moore was going to allow Dr. Oxner to use it. Okay, they were so close. That's important because Oxner invited me. But I don't want to get too much ahead. Remember, my lab was shut down, and I'm going to be going to Buffalo, New York, and I'm going to be working with Dr. Moore, and I'll see Oxner, and I'll see Dr. Deal, and all of that. But I've got all these. They're called, when you do your experiments, you have control mice. I mean, I had about 60 or 70 of them left. Poor little innocent ones didn't deserve. What am I going to? I didn't want to kill them. They were innocent. They had never had cancer or anything, but nobody would take them. Yeah. They were scared of them. So I'm lugging, I've got a big aquarium. I stuffed them all in there. I'm lugging along. What am I going to do? I know what, I'm going to take them down by the river and let them go, on the other way, far away where they'll be safe. I couldn't quite make it. I crossed over Wares Creek from the school, carrying this heavy aquarium. And I saw this gigantic, gorgeous banyan tree and all these bushes and everything. So I tipped the aquarium there and let them go. And then I ran away. So a newspaper article came out the next day saying that I was on my way to Buffalo, New York after doing all my cancer research with these white mice and with my black germ-free mice. Well, that was front page. Deep down inside, they had to know, was a story about this lady's luncheon group that were invaded by white mice that were sitting at
oh God
church party. And they weren't afraid of people, so they were climbing up their legs and everything.
Oh God!
They brought in this cat, and the cat, they weren't afraid of the cat either, And of course, people had to know it was the same. Who else has white mice?
Who else is walking around with a bunch of white mice? So
kindly, nobody ever said a word. They just, Judy's going off to,
She's terrorizing the countryside with white mice.
Yeah. So I'm showing up in hard work to do at Roswell Park, but it was really worth it. I, as I say, helped I got the papers showing I added two items to the formula that they still are in there today. And that was important because Oxner, well, I'm gonna have to back up a little. I decided I wanted to go to St. Francis College. I was going to go to Purdue because I loved Indiana, but yeah, but instead I chose the Catholic college because after 2 years I could switch over to University of Chicago, and I had contacts for that. And then, but that was very close to my relatives and everybody that I missed, because we had moved to Florida and all my relatives were still up north, and everybody I loved. And my father was no help. And I mean, didn't want me to go to college at all. Well, I made a mistake in that I the doctors told me I couldn't have any children. And being a strong Catholic, I believe it wasn't right to ever get married because we could never have children. I just thought that would be wrong. So I decided I'd become a nun. And they said they would put me through medical school. What's the problem, Still go on. But that way I would be able to devote all my time to serving God and helping people. It was beautiful. Well, my father didn't think so. It turned out he was a nominal Catholic, never did get baptized, I found out. Just pretend to be Catholic to enter the family and be able to be married to my mother and so on. And here he comes, and they kidnapped me out of the college. I had been working. I have published a paper. It's in the book. The abstract is actually it was going to be published in the Indiana Academy of Sciences journal, but I got kidnapped and that didn't happen. However, the work I did shows that already I was doing what it said the newspapers said I was supposed to do. The newspapers actually reported that my job at St. Francis, working with Eli Lilly and all this, okay, was, and that's important because Big Pharma was into this stuff. I was working to make cancer more deadly. That's right there in the papers. And I said, why do you want me to do this? And the answer was pretty clear. Well, if you can grow cancer faster than anybody we know. So we want to continue that and keep records, and especially melanoma. Mm-hmm. We want to, because that'll give us ideas on how to conquer cancer if we see what makes it grow faster. They had their reasons. Well, I was fooled. I was being groomed and I didn't know it. I was being groomed to become an expert in helping the CIA. It would turn out to develop a biological weapon. They turned cancer into a bioweapon. I promise you they did. And unfortunately, I was part of it, but I didn't know it, what was going on for a long time. They compartmentalize things. So briefly, I was stuck back at home. What am I going to do? Well, I had received all kinds of scholarships. And my Aunt Elsie was upset when she found out that I wasn't going to college and my dad was going to make me run his company. And at that time, you had to be 21, not 18, to be free of your parents. He said, if you try to leave, he said, I'll arrest you and bring you back in handcuffs. Period. He said, you're going to stay here and you're going to run my business and I'm going to have fun. I mean, isn't that, if you wonder why I wasn't getting along with my parents later, sure. Okay. All right. So, and my mother was too scared to do anything about it. She and my dad had lots of big fights. She was a very strong-willed woman. Okay. I cannot tell you. I mean, I stopped eating. I was very depressed. I stopped believing in God because I thought I offered my life to God and I thought, what? I'm here, I'm locked up, and my life is ruined. And he has power over me till I'm 21. Well, my aunt called Senator Colonel Doyle, and he was friends with Senator Smathers, who was one of my sponsors and offered me scholarship. But I wouldn't go because I had all these other scholarships, and I didn't want to go to Florida. Well, it's February 1962, for heaven's sakes. I mean, it's way past any kind of entrance. They rigged the computer illegally to get me in at University of Florida. Smathers did it. I didn't realize how much power Smathers had, okay? Lots of power. Not the good man people think he was either. He had already donated to help my research and started a bank account at a bank in Bradenton. Later, he buys that little bank. It's on record to get rid of that record because of what we were involved in.
Jeez.
Because I would get involved with Lee Harvey Oswald. He buys the bank and erases all evidence. All I have is an envelope with the bank on it. I mean, who would be sending it to my high school? Well, the bank Smathers didn't know my home address, and my dad didn't want my dad getting the money, so he sent
Mhm.
it to the high school instead, where I was able to, pick up my money. Well, so I'm hoping that you can understand some of the background here,
Sure.
why I was pretty much on my own. I fell in love. I thought I was in love. I was in love with sex, is what it was.
Next
Um,
normal thing.
very, yeah. Um, at the time, I'm at University of Florida. Um, wait a minute. Didn't I tell you that my dad didn't want me there and that he had authority over me? Here come the police.
Oh wow.
They're going to arrest me. I ran to Marna Brady. She knew because she had helped rig the computer and all that. She knew the problem. Put a chair against the door. They're pounding on the door. She says, "Do you have a warrant?" And he said, "No, you've got to get one." Period. Turned out she's a former Marine of all
Oh
things.
God.
This woman, tough as nails.
Yeah.
Okay. And while they're gone, she knows I was going to be working in labs, and they had set it up. So I actually got access because I needed to show that I was earning money. Now, instead of working in one lab, I've got access to 3 labs. And for PIN money, also, so I was in the nutrition lab. I was in uh, the regular biology lab and a botany lab. That had all I had to do with when I was working with Shands Hospital and all that was brand new. They were anxious to have me there because I came with money. Understand that I myself could not get the money, but the labs would. So I could do whatever I wanted after I did certain jobs for them. It was like heaven for me, to do that. And I was auditing my med courses and all that, but the computer has me taking some core courses, and they assigned by random A, B, C, and D for my classes. And so it came out of 3.0, and there was nothing I could do about it. They said, "Don't worry, we'll fix it later." Well, that would never get fixed because of things that happened. Okay. But the bottom line is that I went on. I was now working with blood tests and things. I was working with how to detect cancer in the bloodstream. Why would I be doing that? Well, didn't I tell you that they want to weaponize cancer? If you're going to inject somebody with cancer, you've got to find out if it stays alive or if it gets sifted out by the immune system. So I learned these methods. And there's a little background there. You can go at it unless they've removed it. But the University of Florida actually has from 1962. You'll see that they're working with tagged cells, tagged with radioactive iodine. That's exactly what, of course, that I developed. At any rate, I do not want to go home, right? When school is out. And so I stayed in that summer, and I met a young man, brilliant, could beat me at chess, and nobody else could. Cute, looked like Superman, over 6 feet tall, kind of nerdy looking, like he looked Clark Kent type.
Yeah.
But this man had a secret IQ. That's how smart he was. I would go on to marry this man, actually. It turned out he had Asperger's and was a narcissist. When he wanted me around, he'd be wonderful, and
Mm-hmm.
otherwise, his math was his
Yeah.
passion, and so on. All right, I'm bringing this up because I thought I was in love with him, and remember, I did not want to go home with my parents. I couldn't find anybody smart enough to date that I respected, and this is a problem. And I thought he just seemed to, I don't know, I got pregnant. They said I couldn't have any babies, and they were wrong. Oh, were they wrong? I had been terribly ill when I was 5.5. I was in the hospital altogether a year and a half. Had operations on my abdomen. They said, "No way can you." I ended up in my life having 5 children. So I also had a number of miscarriages, but I fooled them all. All
Sure.
right. I love babies, love children. So did Lee Oswald. We had so much in common. Anyway, when I had a miscarriage, I ended up in the infirmary and I missed a very important interview that actually Dr. Oxner had to call me. And then he said, "What in the world's going on? We got you," he said, "we got you out of your problem with your parents because you wanted to become a nun, and now you a miscarriage." He said, "Make up your mind what you want to be, you know." He said, I know a good woman. She's the best there is in the field, and she's a good, steady woman and just perfect for you." And then he dropped the magic word, Mary Sherman. Oh, I couldn't believe it. Dr. Mary Sherman was probably the best known female cancer researcher, period. She was the head of various societies. I had read her work. She was phenomenal. And she had her own cancer bone lab and so on at Oxner's clinic. And he said, "Would you like to work with her in an internship?" And then she said, "If you accept and go through the internship in the fall, we'll put you straight in Tulane. You'll skip 2 years of college." Okay. Yes, of course. And he hung up. Oh, he said, "See you at the end of May." You said, "See you end of the first week of May," and hung up. What? Wait a minute. This is April. Uh-oh. What am I going to do? I'm not going home. The dorms are closing. We were on the trimester system, and Oxford didn't know that because it was new for University of Florida. By the way, they would eventually get rid of that because it didn't work. But I was in bad shape because all of us were being paid out on our scholarships twice for 2 semesters when we're actually having to go 3. So I was really short on money now because that money wasn't going to be coming in for weeks because it was on a semester system, you know. And so, of course, I wanted to have an internship and earn money. But wait a minute, what am I going to do for the month of April? You know, how am I going to live? Well, he sent a bus ticket, and I arrived in New Orleans on the 19th of April. Wait a minute, it's still a long way to the end of the first week of May, and they were out of town. I was so used to being bossed around. The doctors were always running my life. I mean, I didn't have a minute to myself, really, with working in 3 labs and doing their stuff and my stuff and taking classes and, you know, all these things going on. And I was interested in athletics, so I actually won 4 medals. Can you believe that? At the same time. And there's an interesting article about one of my sons. It says, "When does John Baker ever sleep?" Well, that's the way we are. I mean, I get 2 hours of sleep. That's all I needed. I still only need about 4. It's just the way it is. I just don't need it. And so I was able to pump a whole lot of stuff into that time, and exercise and all that just kept me alert, and I loved it. And so short as I was, I even got a medal in basketball because it was so short they kept fouling me. And I had a fabulous record at the free throw line.
Bro, just draining them all.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's the way it was. And so, I mean, it was bang, bang, bang. I didn't miss, you know. So, yeah. So I was on the winning team, you know, and all that. We all got medals. And then same happened in volleyball and bowling. And then I got an overall medal for overall athletic ability. You know, that's on top of all this stuff that was going on. So we're talking about his top physical condition, and I looked great. I really did. You wouldn't believe that I was a dowdy scientist or anything like that. I wore tight sweaters, and I was proud of my body because I felt like I'm an emancipated woman, you see.
Sure.
Yeah. And it was like, I told my dad, "The next time you see me," because he called and he was very angry because when the police came, of course, they could do nothing. And he said, "You know, he said, you'll see, nothing's going to happen. That's the way it is for women. You'll be sorry." So anyway, couldn't go home or any of that stuff. So I'm here in New Orleans, and the doctors are out of town. So when I went to the YWCA, instead of being taken out for dinner and getting steak, you know, and wine, they'd offer wine and all this stuff and show me off. "This is Judyth, you know, she's blah, blah. Instead, who are you? What do you mean? Your name's not here on the list. I said, why? I was so ignorant. I didn't realize that if I come 3 weeks early,
You're
they're
not,
not going to
yeah,
have anything there at the Y.
you don't
And here
exist.
I am with all my stuff. So I put it all in lockers, and I still had a couple suitcases. And what am I going to? I'm going to have to get a job or something. I've got. What am I going to do? And the only room they had available that I could afford, that I was afraid of, had already had 4 girls in it, 2 strippers,
Ugh.
a Playboy bunny trainee, and a tough waitress. Every other word was a swear word. Okay, those were the 4 girls that were.
Ugh.
Yeah, it was such a shock to me because I had expected. Well, I lived at the YWCA when I was in Buffalo. It was really nice.
Mm-hmm.
This was a hellhole. It was in New Orleans. It was completely. Oh, I mean, their bras and panties were drying, hanging outside the window. Okay,
Ah,
yeah, got it. Yeah,
got it.
and they said, "Baby, you don't belong here." I
Yeah.
said, "Tell me about it. What am I going to do?" And the waitress said, "Well, look, why don't you go out? I just got a raise," she said, "and they need somebody just for a couple hours every morning. At least that would pay for your room." Okay, I'll do it. What about Robert, who said, "Oh, you've had a miscarriage. Okay, I'll marry you. I'll come down and marry you if I get a chance." It's not exactly
No,
love.
not exactly the follow you to the ends of the earth.
No.
I'll see if
And
I
in
can
fact,
pencil it in.
I had to buy my own wedding band. I
Oh
mean,
God.
but I wanted to be legitimate. I mean, you know what I mean? I wanted birth
Sure.
control pills.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, and that's the only way you could get him if you're married. And he felt the same way. So we wanted married to get pills, not because of everlasting love. We wanted everlasting sex. And I thought it was the same thing. I was so foolish.
I think I think most people are earnestly fooled by that early on in life.
Yeah.
I think that's completely. I think that's as normal as believing in Santa when you're little.
Well,
It's what's the difference? It's you feel good and it's cuddling.
yep.
You grow out
Yep.
of it.
And because he was an Aspie, he was good at it. But it was a mechanical good, and I thought it was a wonderful thing. I didn't
Yeah,
know any better. And he was thoughtful enough because he's intelligent, not to hurt me or anything. And
sure.
boy, I thought this is
It's love.
more
Yeah,
love. I'm in love. I wasn't. I was in like,
yeah, yeah.
and it's such a difference. Okay. Meanwhile, um, I'm getting myself in a little trouble because I'm an asset. I have this special formula I memorized that they need me to use on this project that they want me to be working with Dr. Sherman. Now, Edward T. Haslam, in his book, Dr. Mary's Monkey, talks about this secret lab and how Dr. Sherman was murdered and other things. And in fact, everybody I worked with was murdered. Okay. There are only very special reasons that I'm alive. Also, they act like, hey, she's got a high IQ, but she's too stupid to stay alive. I mean, uh, it's not an accident. I've had to work hard at survival, and it really hasn't been easy. For example, in 2003, the History Channel actually put on their site under conspiracy theories, and we have screenshots of it, said that I claimed to have helped develop AIDS. Do you know what that did back then? I had so many death threats, I had to move overseas to save my life. And I lost, the story's never been for sale. I've never asked for a penny. All right, ever, 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 ever. And like I didn't ask you for anything, and I would
Sure.
never, because that's blood money. That's blood money from him. And the man that they accused of killing Kennedy did not do it. And I know more about him than anybody that's alive who tells the truth. There's some people out there that tell lies, or they said lies because they were afraid, and now they can't back up on them, because it makes them look terrible.
Sure.
I understand very much, but I do appreciate the fact that Marina Oswald has never publicly accused me of anything. God bless her. In her heart of hearts, she knows, because I was filmed and she was filmed by the same man. and he had recorded me for 28 hours audio, 18 hours by film. And it comes out as 46 minutes, for the History Channel, which is an hour program, with commercials. And I've had people say, what? You already told your story. You're just embroidering. You're adding all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
46 minutes doesn't even begin to cut all that went on. Okay. That's why my book is 600 pages
Yeah.
long.
Yeah.
And it's full. And I was smart enough, all right. One of the reasons I'm alive, I know, is because I kept records. I was a record keeper, of course, because of all my research and everything. And I could prove upside down and backwards what was going on. And if something happened to me, I was going to make sure that stuff would get out. It's the only way I could protect myself. And there are too many people, newspaper reporters and all that, who would have been interested. This helped to save my life. It really did. Back in this time of the Cold War going on, things were really getting ferocious. Kennedy was elected. I hated Kennedy. You know why I hated him? Because all my anti-Castro friends hated him because of the Bay of Pigs matter. It happened July 61. After all, think about it. Kennedy apparently let them down and allowed them all to be carried away and tortured and killed and so on. And again, I saw it. Lee Oswald is the one who changed my mind. Lee Oswald is the one that showed me what good he had done and how he had been framed. Kennedy was framed to take the blame for the Bay of Pigs.
They didn't. The Air Force said they weren't going to use X number of planes, and then the next day came to him and said, "We need this." They were lying all along, and they had gotten used to bullying presidents, but Kennedy basically said "F you," and so it makes them look. They set him up for failure. It was either you do our bidding, or you set you up for failure, and Kennedy didn't care.
No, he did not, because he's independently wealthy. And by the way, he's suffering so much. I know in his heart of hearts, if his life ended, that was okay. It was for a good cause. I mean, that's the way Kennedy was. He was a courageous man.
He was a strong Catholic as well.
Well, yes, and that helped turn me again, because I met David W. Ferry. David Ferry can be seen in the movie JFK, and he calls up after his name gets in the paper, and this is actual fact. He called up the DA's office in New Orleans and said, "You put my name in the paper." He said, "I'm a dead man." He said, They're going to kill me." 5 days later, he is dead of natural causes. Right. Don't believe for a minute. I have written a book called David Ferry, Mafia Pilot. I knew Dave very well. Now, how did I know David Ferry so well? He wanted to be a priest. I had wanted to be a nun. I was now an atheist. And boy, he did not like that. He did everything in his power to change my mind. So we had many conversations. I learned a lot about him. And I have a 450-page book to prove it. Okay. And Tommy, I'm telling you, a lot of people, if they knew all the facts, they would be so outraged at what was done to Lee, how David Ferry has been postulated to be anti-Kennedy and all that. Well, Dave told me what happened. He was in a very special position, and this is why Lee was able to learn a lot about who wanted to kill Kennedy. And this is very important. When I state unequivocally that Lee Oswald actually saved Kennedy's life when Kennedy was going to be going to Chicago. And that finally did come out. When I spoke of that first, people were outraged, saying, "Well, he may have been, framed, but come on, what do you mean he saved this? How would he even know these things?" Believe me, Mary Sherman was from University of Chicago. He had many contacts there. Lee also knew, David Ferry also was from Ohio, but was flying everywhere, airline pilot. Dave had inside knowledge about who wanted to assassinate Kennedy. He got this in a special way, and I need to explain this to anybody listening. And this is why they killed him too. But there were people who are the military officers. They had a big association they started, and they were coming from their very first meeting, retired military officers, generals, colonels, captains, lieutenants, okay, big shots with their, and who did they want for their keynote speaker? David W. Ferry. That's how charismatic he was. That's how intelligent he was. That's how important he was. He gets up there, and it's right after the Bay of Pigs. He had lost two of his lovers. He was homosexual. By the way, I was very open-minded. Lee always was too, about people having those problems. And I had a dear friend in high school who killed himself because people found out he was homosexual. Things like that really affected me because I love the guy.
Sure.
And it breaks my heart that what he did to himself. He's just like the Dead Poets Society. Same thing. He was really great acting and everything, and he had such a heart. All right, so it didn't bother me that Dave was like that at all. What bothered me is that I attended a party that Lee took me to get to know him. And there he was saying that he hoped Kennedy would be shot. I mean, yeah. And I found out later, well, all these people that were there were anti-Castro people. And he's not going to say that he loves Kennedy.
Sure.
And he's going to find out a lot more if he says he hates Kennedy than if he said he was.
He
said, I've got to do that. He said, if I said hail to the chief, nobody would have come.
Yeah. You got to play the part.
You know, right. The way he talked was very interesting. So I've tried to show some of that. I memorized everything these people said. When the president of the United States is murdered, and the man that you fall in love with and who loves you dearly is murdered and blamed for that when he actually adored Kennedy, I literally memorized everything he said. I'm not going to let his words be lost. So that's all I could do for him. And people say, well, come on, all these conversations, you bet. I have what they call an eidetic memory. I don't forget what I read, and it can be a big problem. When I was growing up, even at age 8, I built my first TV set when I was 8. I had a lot of fun with my dad growing up and all that. But if he had an argument or somebody did in the family, my big extended family, they would come to me and say, all right, you heard it. Who said what? And I would tell who said what. And then the other side would be mad at me, you know. But I was, I remember they brought somebody in, they brought in what they thought was a robot. And all these people are looking at the robot, and people are paying to see the robot. And my family, because they knew my IQ even back then, I didn't know it. The first IQ test I took, they kept it secret from me, you know. But they turned to this little girl and say, Judy, is he a robot or not? You know. So I jumped in the ring and went over and grabbed him. And he was real human, you know. So it's, I had this boldness, you know. And in everything, I wasn't afraid. I'm still not afraid. And, you know, if you're not afraid, there's a lot they can't do to you. They can mess with your mind, but they cannot make you make mistakes out of fear, out of ignorance, perhaps. In this case, David Ferry was standing in front of these people, and he said to them, he was so angry because 2 of his lovers were killed at the Bay of Pigs, and he was angry. He was told that Kennedy was responsible. And he said, somebody should go out, you know, and behind a bush somewhere, and when he's going by an open car, they should shoot his damn head off.
Uh-oh.
They made him get off the stage.
Oh, God.
And he hides behind the curtains. He told me that he felt horrible. He had let the cat out of the bag, so to speak, in front of all these military officers. And he had these impulses. And some people say that because they had known him as a lover or something, he didn't realize how much self-discipline he also had. But I knew, because I could see the work that he could do in cancer research. His mother was dying of cancer, did die of cancer, but he became friends with Dr. Mary Sherman. And of course, I am thorough. I have a witness that who introduced, said, we're getting that, by the way, notarized this week, that his father introduced David Ferry to Dr. Mary Sherman, for people who claim they never met and all this nonsense. All right. So anyway, here is he's behind the curtains, and the thing closes up. And here come about 15, he said 15 or maybe 20 of the about 150 that had attended. That's a considerable number if you think about it. It's 10% anyway. He said, Mr. Ferry, we feel the same way you do about that son of a bitch. That's what that's the kind of language he used, okay? Said, would you like to help us out? He said, because David was working at that time as a pilot for Eastern Airlines, and his route was New Orleans, Houston, Dallas.
Oh,
okay?
God.
Yes, and he could actually get materials among them faster to them than the mail could or couriers could as a pilot.
Hidden right under the nose.
Well, he only did it for 3 weeks, and then that's when Eastern Airlines fired him because of his joyriding with a minor, running a plane upside down and stuff like that, or showing off. So he got fired, and he was trying to get his job back and all that for about a year after that, when I knew him. But the problem that he had, of course, is that these people trusted him because of his open statement, and he continued saying these things. And so a reputation has come around that David Ferry was anti-Kennedy and so on. But like he said, but the fact is, he said to me, he called me Jay, okay? And a lot of people didn't realize that it was a girl that he was ever talked about because they thought Jay was Jay.
Oh.
You know?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So it never came out that I was Judyth, to friends. He said, I talked to Jay or whatever. So he said, oh, look, it was like this, Jay. I found out the facts, and I realized that he was set up, just like you said, Tommy. And because he got more information. And he said, the fact is, I voted for him, and he's my Catholic brother. And he said, I'm in a position, if I play it right, I'll be able to find out who his enemies are. And because most of them are just hot air, as far as he was concerned, especially anybody in New Orleans. But all this really started in New Orleans. And we have people that are still alive today who know darn well it started in New Orleans. And that's one of the reasons they have this FBI. There are all kinds of papers they never released about New Orleans, and it was like a big fat mystery. Well, there is no mystery. If you read my book, you'll see it, because I kept track of every single day we were together. Why would I do such a thing? Because when I found out what kind of man this was, it happened right away. I am going into bars with my new friends. I have seen them get dressed up in nothing, just putting on pasties, I am seeing more flesh than I ever saw on a cadaver. Okay, so here we have all this going on, and they're out of town, and I am with the wrong people, and I have knowledge, and they need that knowledge for this project. What's the project about? I remember I told you how Oxner lost his kids. He had trusted his doctors. Nobody was more virulently anti-Castro than he was. He was training doctors, and at Brent House, they would stay there. All these Cubans, doctors and so on. Suddenly, when Castro came into power, he's anti-American now, he sends them all for training it to the USSR, and they hated that. Instead of being able to get rich, becoming like plastic surgeons, they had to go and fix peasants' noses on a salary, okay? There was a lot of resentment, far more than you'd ever really believe, and of course, they didn't dare. But there were ways to get to Castro medically. For example, if he had to get an x-ray, and that technician who really hates him, but Castro doesn't know that. If doctor goes and orders an x-ray, who's going to check the technician about how high the dose is on that x-ray? Okay. Now, why would I bring that up? In my book and elsewhere I have published, and I brought this information out 2 years ago. I was the first one from in the public when they released the hospital records. I had friends at the at the National Archives because they know the truth. They have seen records that I was using that vanished, okay, and things like that. So a couple of them were my friends. So what happened is, well, there are two things. For example, well, the one I'm going to bring up now. The bottom line is there are many files out there that are not the originals anymore. People actually, so-called researchers, went in there and they actually took the originals and made carbon copies and just put the copies. That's what the archives has. And others will say borrowed by the FBI and they never gave it back. Lots of stuff like that. At any rate, I am in a position, a strange position, because I am not traceable. I'm not a doctor. I have special knowledge. And Dr. Oxner didn't know how much I knew about the clandestine side of things. How? Remember, I told you a certain person visited my high school, went because of my IQ and all that. And that's how I started to get connections with Oak Ridge and all this other stuff. And they sent all kinds of equipment. And we even had a brand new building that was built. And I went around to help raise money for that. A new science building. All this happened because it was during the time of Sputnik and all the whiz kids were being given special treatment. That's what it comes down to. Special training I mean, why would I be taught Russian, for heaven's sakes?
Sure.
Yeah. Well, that comes into play too. Well, Knut Mikkelsen, who came and talked to me and interviewed me and all that, had been a spy for the OSS. And he was pretending to be a Nazi, and his whole family rejected him and would have nothing to do with him and treated him horribly. They did not realize that he was a spy. And as we talked and all that, the reason I told him about what happened to my dad, that he couldn't go to Los Alamos because my mother and all that, and she didn't want to be locked up. And they even said that because of the work he would be doing would get classified, that we might have to never leave, and things like that. So I told him some of that, and he just, people, I think, like to talk to me. And what happened is that he started telling me some of his past. And it got into the paper. We have a high school newspaper, and it got in there that he, for example, was, because he got interviewed. He was captured, and the Nazis knew he was a spy, and they were going to execute him. He escaped, and so on. So he comes home, and they finally realize he's a hero. But what he went through, and I told him I had learned how to make disappearing ink and all that. And so he told me about what tradecraft was and some of the little things they did. I was fascinated. Please tell me more. So about a month or so, we were in contact, and that really stuck with me. I'll tell you why. Because when I'm in New Orleans, I'm at a post office, and I'm trying to see if my fiance is actually going to come, looking for a letter. He promised to write every day, and he wasn't. I was angry and upset because of that. And I was allowed to only write one letter to him because I didn't want my parents to know we were going to elope, because his parents hated Catholics and my parents hated his because they were Protestants, and there's no chance. They just detested each other. The one time they met, I mean, they had cats. My parents had fancy poodles. They had a Lincoln. My parents had a Chrysler Imperial. She wore suits and was prim. My mother wore low-cut, custom-made dresses flown in from Hawaii, and solid gold puff of smoke in her face, from her solid gold cigarette holder. She didn't smoke. And
just right down the middle.
They hated each other immediately. There was no chance. So we if we're going to get married, it's going to be an elopement. So the letter I'm writing, it doesn't say it's from me. It says it's from his friend, R. Rourke, okay? But the R that I used, see, I'm doing that R, looked like an A to Lee, like a cursive A, because I've scribbled it for the, said it's from Rourke, general delivery here, New Orleans. So Robert Baker could open it. And the letter is to Robert Baker at Eglin Air Force Base, where his parents were putting up military stuff, military housing and stuff. Okay, he was a contractor. Lee Oswald told me later that R.A. Baker at Eglin Air Force Base, that there was a special agent FBI officer named Robert A. Baker at
Oh
Eglin
Lord.
Air Force Base.
Oh Lord.
He thought I was writing to him or sending this letter off. And the R. Rourke, which was what Robert told me to call myself so that they wouldn't catch on. He said, don't put perfume on her. They'll think he's gay. You know? Yeah. He saw it as an A. Rourke, and he knew Alexander Rourke. He said he'd met him in Florida. Alex Rourke was working for the CIA as a investigator and pilot, and he had met him in Florida. So Lee did go to Florida, okay, at some point. Now, he told me this later because he sees me hand this letter over after I'm angry. When I turned around, I had actually put an ad in the paper, and Robert said, don't put your name, don't say Judy, or when are you coming, Robert, you know, or something like, but I put it, he wanted to know I got there safely, and he didn't know how to call me because I was at the Y. And so I said, okay, I'll put a little thing in the ad in the paper. And I even kept the envelope that I scribbled that on. That's even in the book, okay? I've kept all kinds of little things. Why? Because it said Jario, you know, pretty here, lonely or something, when when you're coming or something like that. And the jar, Jaryo, the JA was for Judyth Ann, okay? R was for Robert, and Yo is I am Judyth Ann to Robert. See, that's what jar. But Lee thought it was a code.
Oh Lord.
Because when I dropped this thing, I had kissed it, I'd circled it, I had been carrying it around. Oh, his eyes have seen it. He loves me. His eyes have seen it. I see it, and I know he saw it. Okay, crazy, huh? Anyway, I dropped it when I handed over the letter to mail it, angry because he hadn't written like he said he was going to. And I had that under my arm. I dropped that piece of newspaper that had that circle that said Jario on top of the other things. And I showed on top of this, because he said, I said, is there anything maybe for Mr. Rourke? And he said, well, you're not Mr. Rourke. I said, well, I'll show you where it says in the letter that I can, send something for Mr. Rourke. And as I hunted for that, I was working, as I said, remember, I got this job as a waitress. I would go only 2 hours every morning. Just enough because they needed somebody until they could hire a full-time person.
Yeah.
And this is summer, and a lot of people were taking off a vacation. It seemed that way, It's going to be that way. School is getting out, you know what I'm saying? So it happened to be way out at the airport. I had to ride a bus for 45 minutes to get out there to work 2 hours and then come back. Who would do that? Lee sees me show this check stub because I didn't have ID at that time. I was new, to the area. Even my birth certificate was with my parents, and what am I going to do? So I'm not going to, I have to prove who I am somehow. So I said, look, I'm working here and everything, and this is me. See, here's my check stub. He said, well, I can't use that. But Lee had wonderful, really great vision, and he could see that it was Royal Castle. It was the #1 Royal Castle in the area, out at Airline Highway, 45 minutes away. That turned out to be right next door, just blocks, several blocks, but you could see everything clearly from where the Godfather, Carlos Marcello, had his headquarters. And at this Royal Castle, where I was working for just 2 hours every morning, Bobby Kennedy had a surveillance team there because they were open 24 hours, and they had binoculars and everything, kept watching who was coming and going from the Godfathers. And Lee knew about Bobby Kennedy out there, #1. Okay, so he's involved with Bobby Kennedy. For anybody who thinks he wasn't, I don't know how deeply, but he knew these things going on. When he saw that I was working at the Royal Castle and I was only working there 2 hours, he thought I was a courier for him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, he told me this later. Well, obviously, whether he was sent or whether that got his interest up, We now believe he was sent, but at the time I didn't realize it, you know. But he had to be. But what I saw is there was no wedding ring on his left hand. Oh boy, and he's cute. Okay, a lot cuter than the doctored photos and the ones they select. And if you blow up those photos, you'll see they made him smile. They added grin. The smirk is not real. When you blow up the pictures, you can actually see where they drew it in. It's so disgusting. But at any rate, that's what they did. And he picks up this rolled up piece of newspaper and hands it back. And I thought, well, I'll get his interest because I'll do what works every time with the guys. I love the boys. And I had a wonderful time. I had a lot of boyfriends. And Robert, by the way, drove them away one by one, but he was persistent. Let's put it that way. So when he picked that up and handed it to me, I said, "Karasha, Tavarish," like that. That is well done, comrade, in Russian.
Oh,
Whoa, who speaks Russian anywhere? Back then, especially during the, well, I did that with the guys, especially because they'd say, "What did you say?" And then we could start a conversation.
oh,
I say,
that's
"Oh, I just like to do that, just
pretty
see it."
smooth.
Well, yeah, well, I had a wonderful time, but
I need to learn that. What am I doing speaking English to girls? I need to go up to women in the gym and start speaking Russian.
there you go. Well, you shouldn't have a problem. But at any rate, we have, uh, and I love guys. I always will. I mean, they're half the human race. Why not? You know?
Yeah, go for it. Have
Uh,
fun.
and yeah. And so he says in Russian back to me, he says, "It's not wise to speak Russian in New Orleans."
Oh shit.
What? Wow.
So now he's got you.
Oh boy, now I'm interested. Yep. So
The
this is how we met.
your own plan was fired back at you.
Well, I was shocked.
Yeah.
And I didn't know anybody to, well, I take that back. I had two friends from high school who were taking Russian at University of Florida. And I met them down in the computer and the radiation center, sorry, the radiation center. They were amazed to see me down there because they thought that I was, they knew I was working in the nutrition lab and the labs. So they didn't realize I had access to radiation and all that. And they remembered that, seeing me down there. I'm bringing that up because they were speaking Russian when I encountered them down there, and they're both cute. That's Dave Dietrich and David Tracy, and I had a crush on both of them, and I mean, we had a lot of fun together in high school. You know,
Who's the first one?
Dave Tracy and David Dietrich.
Dietrich?
Mm-hmm.
Like Fort Dietrich?
Mm-hmm. No, CH ends with CH. Dietrich.
Gotcha. Okay, sorry.
So, at any rate, all those years, I only knew two people that could even speak Russian. And here he starts speaking, and pretty soon he overwhelms me because most of my ability was reading, and I didn't have much chance to converse with anybody. And what am I going to do? I mean, so he tells me he spent 30 months in Russia. Now, I think he would never have told me any of that, but he saw all this stuff and he thought, aha, she knows stuff. All right, you know, she's this woman. They want me to meet. She knows stuff, probably knows the same stuff I do, or whatever. Because Rourke and Baker and Eglin Air Force Base and the code, and I'm out there only 2 hours every morning at Royal Castle where Bobby Kennedy is surveilling people, and he's involved with the Godfather because his uncle is his sister, his mother's sister is married to the mob. Lee was a great bridge between the mafia and the CIA, which were working together at that time to try and kill Castro. They finally came out and admitted it. It took him years, but of course, everybody knows that now. So Lee is valuable to the CIA and to the mafia because she could talk their language on both sides. And they have special language, believe me. Special ops they do and everything. And so he was a communicator. Don't think that Lee Oswald had nothing to do. That was a very busy man in New Orleans. So anyway, so when he tells me that he had spent 30 months in Russia and came back with a Russian wife and child, and he's walking around a free man, I just looked at him and said, "You're a hero."
Mm.
Right away. because I had this experience with Knut Nicholson. I knew there was no imagine today if somebody had gone to North Korea.
Yeah.
They'd been there 30 months. They came back with North Korean wife and child and had been in the papers denouncing the United States and saying, I'll put on a uniform and fight Americans. And all that was in the paper. And he's walking around and he's not in jail. Come on. So I knew right away. I said, I know you have to be on our side.
Well, yeah, you don't.
Yeah.
It's almost too obvious.
Well, you'd be surprised if he never would have said some of those things to me, though,
Sure.
because of what he saw, you see, in my fact, who speaks Russian? So he thought I knew a lot more than I really did.
Hmm.
And here, who am I working with? Oxford. CIA sent Lee Oswald to oversee this project, which the CIA really wanted to get hold of, all right, to kill Castro. Oxford thought he had control of it. He had no such control, but he thought he did. And Lee is there to keep it honest. That's the way he put it. Okay. Make sure it doesn't get into the wrong hands, especially mafia or something. Okay. So what does he do? He pretends to be pro Castro in New Orleans. He's passing out flyers. There's all kinds of things that he's doing that are, I mentioned all of them in the book and all the stuff he did. Why he went after the stevedores at the USS Wasp, all kinds of things that, but I'm going to give you a little background. Do you know, you can look this up. You have a computer there, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you look up, it'll tell you what day Lee Oswald joined the Marines. Just look it up. You'll find this interesting.
Okay.
When did Lee Oswald join the Marines?
When did Lee
Harvey Oswald, yeah, join the
Harvey
Marines.
Oswald join the Marines?
October
24th, 1956.
All right. Now, what I want you to do now is look up, when did the Hungarian Revolution start?
October 23rd, 1956.
The day before is when the Hungarian Revolution started. Lee Oswald was so upset at what the Russians did invading Hungary that he joined the Marines, and you'll never hear that. That's the
I
truth.
had never heard that.
So, well, of course not, because that shows he's a patriot.
Yeah.
You see, the day after the invasion of Hungary, where the people were, and I'm a Hungarian family, as I told you. So, I mean, we talked about that.
Sure.
And I did not realize that that was never mentioned by anybody. They do not want anybody to know that Lee Oswald joined the Marines to fight the Russians. Okay. Now, I don't know what else you want for proof, because, I mean, that's pretty good. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's the truth. And there are many things like that that I know. So you're not going to hear my name. They're going to compress me. They're going to stop me. They're going to do everything they can. And of course, you'll find online that I'm a liar, a fraud, and all this stuff. But I have living witnesses, and I have other witnesses. They're on film. They have written their depositions, everything. I've got them and evidence, and they'll still say no evidence. And when I first spoke out, they said mice can't be given cancer. We were given mice cancer in the early 1900s. Okay, scientists were with tar. I mean, there are things like that that are just disgusting. But that's what I've had to live with, or I should say, have to endure. Okay. Now I'm going to be 80, and I'm not going to be here forever. So it's very important to get information out, and that's why I accepted this right on the fly to talk to you.
You did. You did. For anyone that's listening, we were chatting on the phone, and I was trying to get you to come on tomorrow, and I was like, "You want to do it today?" And you were like, "Give me 15 minutes." And I was like, "All right, let's do it." It took.
Yeah, because tomorrow I'm completely swamped with interviews and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. No. No. For the record, it took no coercion. You walked right on. You said happily.
Absolutely, because I loved him, and I still love him, and I'll love him to the end. And love has no boundaries in time. I'm going to cry if I think about it too much, because I found out the difference between real love and the kind of love, so-called, I have with Robert Baker. And the difference is just awesome, just awesome. Real love, true love does exist, and people need to know it's worth the gamble, folks. It's worth the gamble. Try it out. If it doesn't fit, The other thing is that people give up too soon these days. They want everything easy. Oh, I had an argument with her, for hell. With her, I'm out,
Yeah.
forget it. No, we have to stick it through because everybody's different. And like Jordan Peterson said, it's very true. You don't want somebody who's going to just fawn all over you. And like, uh, would you really want somebody who never argued with you, never had anything to say, I expect better of you, or ever say something like, you've made me proud of you today? We are going to have our arguments, we're going to have our thing, but amazingly, Lee and I didn't. We would walk along, and I'd turn my head and he'd be turning his head at the same time to look at me. We finished each other's sentences. We just thought the same way. It was uncanny. And it gave us so much comfort because we didn't have anybody we could talk to as we got deeper and deeper into all this mess.
Yeah.
And it became a mess. So I've given you plenty of background now, but the point is that I originally was not supposed to be in on the secret side of anything. I was supposed to be working in Dr. Mary Sherman's lab and working on certain aspects there. And they had a ring of labs set up. The labs only knew what they did in their part, and they did not know how it all fit together. But if they ever completed the circle, they might figure it out. David Ferry was not in that circle. They broke the ring by putting David in because he knew enough, and he could actually move materials from one place to another without one doctor meeting another. Now, he got very busy because trying to get his airline job back. So he had asked for an assistant because he had to fly to Miami too often. And you can't go and leave cancer cells and let them rot while you're having to fly to Miami and stuff like that. So they'd asked for an assistant. And when it turned out that Lee talked to me, he thought I was that assistant. So did David Ferry. They don't give you enough information. This need to know thing can backfire sometimes. So what happened is that they thought I was the assistant that had been asked for. And Oxner's out of town, so he couldn't tell them any different. And I knew Oxner, and I knew I was supposed to be with Mary Sherman, and David Ferry knows. So it looked like it turned out, of course, that by the way, we even know who the person who was supposed to be assistant has spoken up and said he was supposed to be the assistant. But I got there before he did, obviously, because I came early. Well, by then, Dave told me everything was going on, basically, and where I was supposed to fit in. And they assumed because it's homosexual, that's why they sent a girl. So he would seduce, who it was. Okay. Now, I could go further, but the bottom line is that while we're talking about efforts to kill Fidel Castro, Oxner hated JFK. He knew all the people who were against him. They were so close to, like, Anna Chenault. Now, you may not know who that's the butterfly lady who stopped the Vietnam War summit from happening, and it made the war continue. She's the one that broke that up. She talked to Oxner before she went to that meeting. And there are many ways that things were just connected together that would amaze you. When Oxner's first wife died, very interesting that she didn't smoke and died of lung cancer, by the way. And he marries this beautiful young thing who's very close to Richard Nixon. And she can't get her passport. They want to go to, I think it was Greece or Italy. She just calls the White House and she gets her passport, just like that. We're talking about Oxner flying at least once a week to Washington, D.C. Many people did not realize the connections of this man with all of Kennedy's enemies. You would not believe. When I said that he was close friends with Clay Shaw, nobody believed me. So I had to come up because I knew. So I got the record showing that Clay Shaw had worked for Oxner for 9.5 years at International House as one of his directors, for heaven's sakes. And then my publisher came up with a photo of them together laughing, and I've been able to prove close relationships and other things between them. There is no doubt of how deeply involved Dr. Alton Oxner was. Now, interesting, there are little hints even in Lee's own records. For example, we have a fake vaccination record. It shows that he got a smallpox vaccination. Why? Because he's using a fake name here of Heidel.
Mm-hmm.
Only it's Heidel, but he has to go and take materials to the U.S. Public Health Service Infectious Disease Office, and where we're using a very important linear particle accelerator to zap cancer cells and make them even more deadly. That's the bottom line. All right. Through mutations. We're doing gain of function, okay? Research way back then. And I knew how to do it. And there were things I suggested that when they used it, it expedited, things made things better, to my shame. But I at the time, I was motivated to want to kill Castro, and that's what this was about. Kill Castro with something that looks like lung cancer because he's always smoking cigars. Mm-hmm. Oh, for heaven's sakes. And then you're not going to have World War III, are you?
Yeah.
So, I mean, they gave me all these reasons to cooperate. Yeah.
Sure.
And I felt they made me feel important with a lie, It turned out that when he got very angry at one point, when I refused to go, when they were going to go and use volunteers, and they told me that these people had terminal disease. I asked which one, then I found out they didn't. And these poor prisoners had volunteered for be used as guinea pigs, and if it worked, it would kill them, and they weren't being told. That's how I got kicked out of the project. It really saved my life, because I was Judy Very when I met David Ferry, and that's how I was known as JV, okay? But I was for Dr. Oxner, for all his records, I was, actually went to Riley Coffee Company. I was there, I was Mrs. Baker. But when I was kicked out and went to Florida, I was Mrs. Robert Ellison Baker III, the wife of someone who would become a very important scientist with patents and high positions, one of the highest positions. Exxon invented many things. Turned out to be, you can still find his patents online and everything, And that was his own. He did so much stuff for Exxon you wouldn't believe. So, I mean, he was absolute genius, and we managed somehow to get along. Okay, long story. But I actually became a Mormon to hide. I had to. I could not do any of the things that were in my heart to help people, to cure cancer, any of that. I had to be what Dave Ferry said, you have to keep your head down. You have to be a vanilla girl. It's over, or they'll kill you. He said, I can't even talk to you again, or they'll kill me. He said, we just all have to be quiet. You understand that Mary Sherman involved in this project, all right? When the Warren Commission came on July 21st, 1964, to get testimonies, she was front page news as a murder victim, set on fire, stabbed, and her right arm was gone. Now, you tell me how many of us are going to speak out, because some people knew what was going on. So who does speak out that day to the Warren Commission? Dean Andrews from the Godfathers Lawyer Assembly, okay, laughing and joking, as you can see him on JFK. And Jim Garrison knows darn well that Dean Andrews knows a lot, okay? And I met him. I met Andrews. I met all these people. New Orleans was a much smaller town, I'll put it that way. And Oxford moved in high places, and there were people I met that would amaze you. I met Shaw himself, and so on. It's all written down, because when I realized what was going on, I wanted a record of this. And you can understand that I thought it was because we were going to kill Castro and we'd be heroes. Someday I would tell what happened, how we saved the world from World War III and so on. And the whole time, they were slowly enmeshing Lee Oswald to make sure that he would be framed for Kennedy's death. When he exerted himself and he did everything he could with the knowledge he got from Dave Ferry and from Mary Sherman and others, penetrated the assassination ring, and they knew he was doing it. And he said, I'm not a world-class shooter. They're trying to tell me I'm invited in and all that. And of course, he pretended he didn't like Kennedy, but they knew better. There are so many things he did for our country, and people don't know. And I'm going to stop right now because there would be other things we can talk about. But I hope you have some questions, and then I can answer them.
Um, um, I wanted to ask you about what we spoke about on the phone briefly about
Okay.
the payment he got from the Office of Naval Intelligence.
Oh, yeah. Well, understand that when he became a fake defector, he's only weeks before he's going to be discharged, less than 3 months. His goal, he told me, Lee's was to penetrate the Soviet Union, the Iron Curtain, while he was still a teenager. Now, people don't know, but we have the family to back this up, the Charles Thomas family, that Lee, when he was only 12, was playing hooky and all that, and he's in New York, and he actually crosses over. He wanted to see Canada. So when he's 12, he crossed over playing hooky, and the man at the border, his name is Charles Thomas. He's customs officer, and he made a deal with Lee. He said, look, tell me your name and address and all that. He said, if you're not back by when it's really dark, he said, you're going to get arrested. We're going to find you. But I'm not going to let you go over because he said, I kind of admire the fact that you hitchhike all the way up here. So Lee told me he got on the bus called to go to the bus. It has it was going to a special park. What was the name of the park? Crystal Beach. It's called Crystal Beach. So I talked to the family. I said, Lee introduced me to your grandfather and your father because her dad was still alive. And he told me that he put Lee on the bus to Crystal Beach. And they said, what? You know about Crystal Beach? I said, well, yeah, he told me. They brought out a photograph, and it's in my book, showing Charles Thomas standing there as the customs officer with some suitcases there, and behind him is a bus that says Crystal Beach. It's just wonderful, And then I said, well, he had tattoos on his fingers. Can't miss that. And they have photographs showing me the tattoos on his fingers, and so on and so forth. Other things that he was married to a Chitimacha Indian. That's how I found the family, because the Chitimacha are only over in New Orleans area, these Indians. Because I said, are you an American citizen? Because he had an accent. And it turned out, he said, well, I'm more than that. He said, I'm married to a Native American Chitimacha Indian. So that's how I found that out. So why did Lee introduce me to this man? Because this man, as customs officer, they flew him in because Lee has a passport stamped all over it, Soviet Union. You can't use it for ID or anything, all right? And it's a long story about that. He doesn't want to have any records if he can help it. Very few records are to be generated, as he wanted to become a spy. And that's because when he was 12 years old, at that same time, he saw some episodes of I Led 3 Lives. Now, his brother said he saw him in Texas, and then when they found out it wasn't showing in Texas, then they didn't believe that Lee actually saw them, but he did. And of course, I found the records showing that it was playing at that time in New York, because that's what I do. How did I do that? Remember, I told you my photograph was, they took my picture, and I was one of 6 people that when I was there at Roswell Park. And I had cut that clipping out, and I showed it to him. And he turned it over because Lee is curious about everything. And on the back, it showed, and that's in my book too, it shows the different TV programs. He said, I wonder if I Led 3 Lives is still playing. And it was. It's right there on the back of my photograph. So then that's when he told me about Charles Thomas and all that stuff, that he actually went up there. So he knew all about Buffalo. He walked through it himself, and hitchhiked, went to Crystal Beach and so on. So what happens when he gets his passport later? See, he's telling me he made an application. Now get this. The man had been in the Soviet Union, remember, 30 months. He makes out his application. Charles Thomas is flown in to approve it in 24 hours, just 24 hours, with a stack of others, so it doesn't, be by itself. Here's how he filled it out. It says, it asked when was he married to Marina Prusakova. He put the date as April 31, 1961. There is no April 31.
Yeah.
This is Lee and his sense of humor.
Yeah.
Okay. Run out his own passport application. He told me I could put his name, he could put his name down as Santa Claus. They still would have approved it.
Yeah.
But just to show you, until it came out in color, I was not able to show that Lee Oswald didn't even fill out where it said photographer. They finally came out in color because I saw the original, and the writing that Charles Thomas used was in magenta ink and Lee's was in blue black. Okay. So now it's come out in color, and you can see that where it says occupation, Lee said, fill in whatever you want. And he wrote photographer. He didn't even fill out his own on his application, his own, what he said, what do they want me to be? I'll be. So he put photographer down. The CIA did that with using this customs officer. So, and where else it says on the same application that he intends to go and visit Poland, which is USSR, and intends to go to Finland, which was being run by the Soviets at that time, really was, and intends to go back to the Soviet Union, and he gets it approved in 24 hours, and I saw it with my own eyes. And he introduced me to Charles Thomas. That's how come I know about the tattoos. I shook his hand, So why am I talking about all this? Because Lee joined the Marines as a patriotic duty, okay, after the Hungarian Revolution, and they begged for America to help. Nobody would. And I had relatives there that got murdered, okay, they were shot. So that's what we talked about. This is why I know these things. I know so much, and people, if they only knew everything about Lee, they would be so angry and upset because he was such a good man. So Lee tells me at this time, well, I got hazard pay. I said, well, what do you mean hazard pay? He said, well, they pay you extra, a lot extra, because you may not come back. And he said, I had probably a 50-50 chance of coming out alive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And boy, did he come out alive. You can look that he got a loan from the State Department because he didn't have enough money to bring back his wife and child along with him. Okay. Now, in small print, it says the citizen has to be in good standing as a U.S. citizen to get this loan. Okay. He got it. Over $400. That's like $4,000 today. Okay. Yeah. But wait a minute. Did anybody ever look at the papers? They're not online anywhere. They've taken them off ever since I mentioned. You ought to see the papers he filled out. You're supposed to fill out the insides. They're like 5 or 6 pages. They're blank inside practically. Where it says, what did you do? Like in the Soviet Union, it's there. It's blank. And they still approve the loan. Blank. Now, I have copies of that, but they've taken it off the internet. But I've downloaded it. Don't worry. I've done my homework, So Lee was paid hazard pay. And if they release those records, the tax records, they will never, if they ever release them, they're going to be doctored. And they're getting so clever now, we'll never know.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, Lee was paid extra money, and it was put into a fund. And if anything happened to him, his wife would get the money. And that's probably why we have Marina Oswald getting $25,000 anonymously, which is equivalent today of $250,000, because he had set up a fund through an insurance thing in case something happened to him. And of course, he was shot on TV. And here comes $25,000 for his wife and his 2 little girls. You know what Lee told me? He said, I don't want anything to happen to you and everything, but please tell my little girls that I was a good guy. And please have babies for me. He knew that would keep me alive because I wouldn't kill myself. I saw him shot on TV. To this day, I can't think about it without pain. And people don't understand that you think that it fades. It does not with my, I have an excellent memory. And that's the problem. I see things in pictures.
Yeah.
I can remember things I ate on certain days and everything. 60 Minutes was amazed at that. They had investigated me for 14 months and they interrogated me plenty. And they'd bring out stuff I had said a year earlier, and I'd say precisely the same words again. And they were amazed. So they later did a program about people who can remember every detail of their life. And before I got hit on the head with it and had, I've been hurt, I could do most of that. I still can. I still have a terrific memory. I mean, a lot of people don't believe I'm going on 80, because I can remember everything, And when editors were looking, wanted to add something to the conversations, I remember one especially when Lee asked me to marry him. He said, I know that Baker never asked you. He said, I'm going to ask you 100 times. He asked me to marry him 100 times. Can you imagine? And the last time he asked me, I said, yes. Well, in the book, they put yes, yes, yes. I said, no, that's not what I said. So anytime they made a mistake, I would fix it. And back to the original, and, I don't have to look at the original. I know what it was supposed to say because I memorized everything. And so that's kind of shocked them, that I could do that. But that's the way it is. I spent time every year around Thanksgiving, every single year, reviewing everything he said so I would not forget. Remember, people used to do oral histories that way before they could write. They would send out, yes.
Sure.
I knew I could do it. And being a Catholic, raised in a Catholic school, we had to memorize these long poems and everything, Excelsior and so on. And long passages from scripture, and our all the devotionals, and catechism and so on. It was easy for me to memorize it, but you have to keep doing it,
Yeah.
So 60 Minutes, when they tried 3 times to film me and it was stopped from higher up, including Dan Rather, by the way, he was alive, and I would confront him any day, any hour, anywhere, because we've got pretty good, it's hearsay. He didn't tell me to my face, but secretary did. At any rate, they stopped it. I went to Phil Scheffler and Mike Wallace, okay, and Don Hewitt. Those are the 3. Hewitt founded 60 Minutes. They're the 3, the biggest guys in 60 Minutes tried their best because they were going to retire. They felt like this was a story of a lifetime. I couldn't get it. I have 2 checks from CBS. They paid me over $2,000 for lost wages. They had never done that before to anybody. I never would have received that money if I had been telling even one little fib. Okay, I was a credible witness, and they paid me lost wages. It says so right there. So anybody say, well, we didn't do it because it didn't have enough evidence. That's not true. It got stopped from above, and that's the way it went. But doesn't matter, because people now are learning the truth about their government. And we had a coup d'etat. They took Kennedy out because he had enough guts to be a president. He was our last real president. I'm pretty convinced that every president after that got taken to a little room and shown the Zapruder film where they can see Kennedy's head blown to smithereens. So maybe be a good boy and everything will be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I won't be stopped. You see, what if I got to lose at my age? I don't have nothing to lose, only to gain heaven.
Yeah.
Okay. So I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, ma'am. So as not to keep you forever,
there's so much to say, but this is what I think is the basis, because when people get online, they're going to see a lot of lies. They're just outrageous lies. Like, look how she's padded her story, in the 46 minutes, I said it often enough. You'll notice if you have to be alert for it, but Lee said near the end, it's near the end of it, that that they call it they killed Kennedy, the big event. They called it the big event. Yeah. And it actually got on that 46 Minutes. And only a few months later, E. Howard Hunt, the CIA, and by the way, St. John, his son, is I really have had a close relationship with him, and I feel really sorry for all the suffering he's gone through, okay, in his life. His father being the great Hunt, who's also one of the Watergate burglars, okay. And CIA guy, and his mother was blown up in a plane, carrying CIA money and all these terrible things that happened to him. But I think it's very interesting that Hunt, when he thought he was going to die, he makes a recording for his son, and he calls the name of the op where they're going to kill Kennedy, the big event. That's how close that Lee Oswald got to these people. God bless him. And he couldn't even say I'm CIA. He had so many contacts in the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union would have shot and killed all of them just to prove that they weren't involved with Kennedy's, destruction. And there's no way he would expose them. They knew he wouldn't. All he could say is that he was a patsy. And you know what? Even when he was dying, that they shot him and they put him in this room for 5 minutes. They could have taken him right out past the trucks and everything and put him in the ambulance right away. No, they moved the truck out and they moved the ambulance. They wanted him to die. We have records showing that we have a photograph showing that they have a cylinder of oxygen in the ambulance. And then they've got the bill, and it shows that it didn't even give him oxygen on the way to the hospital. Nope, they did not.
So
I could go on and on with the bad things they did to him in the hospital, but I'm not. Anybody saying that they treated him the way he should have been treated? Well, if that's so, why did they moved him first into the trauma room 1, and that was where Kennedy died? Oh, we can't have him in here. So they actually pull him back out and move him down the hall to a different room. Now, that's not prejudice. Think about it. So, he had no anesthesia when they cut him open. None. It doesn't matter. I'm going to see him again in heaven. And I'm telling you right now, I want justice for him, because if you get justice for Lee Oswald, you know what? That's how you get justice for John F. Kennedy, because he didn't do it. That means those killers, all right, some of them may still be alive. Now, I understand that the people who actually shot him, we're pretty sure it was a sniper teams, and they were able to shoot in unison, so that it would sound like one shot. Unless you're in a certain area where you could hear extra echoes, then you think you could hear maybe, some people thought they heard 6 or 7 shots. All those have been ignored. Richard Charnon is a fine mathematician. He has a book out. You can go to I have a place called JFK DallasConference.com. And if you go to JFK you can look 50 best books, in my opinion, about the Kennedy assassination. And Richard Charnon's book about reclaiming science is there. And he talks about all the people who had things to say, like they heard 7 or 8 shots, and they're not even counted. Yeah. So lies all over the place. And all through it, my Lee was a hero from day one. And I just want everybody to know it. And that's the bottom line. Excuse me.
No, you're fine.
I love everybody, and I love you. Thank you for letting me talk and get the truth out. Please spread it around. Let people know the truth.
I love you too, Judyth. I thank you for coming on here. This is maybe a good time to wrap this one up.
Yeah.
Ms. Baker, I would love to have you on again.
Well, there's a lot I'd like to talk to everybody about COVID, about what really is going on.
Well,
because
hey,
this
that.
is another biological weapon.
Well, hey,
Now,
that's
I
that.
call them bioweapons because that hits the headlines easier. It is, used that term a lot, and it's starting to catch on. Bioweapon, not biological weapon,
Yeah.
bioweapon. Because it isn't even biological. It's devilish.
Yeah.
It's hellish. They have no right. We really must stop these gain of function uh, forays using CRISPR, using reprogramming RNA. We don't know the consequences. I've been studying this all week. I have always studied it, but I'm going to be giving a talk about it, about the latest variant. They've been working on these variants for years. Now, how all of a sudden they're all getting released? How interesting, and how much money they're making. And I I I don't have much money, but I bought a stock. I've bought a share in Tesla just to fight them because uh, I noticed that he released information about COVID and he
Mm-hmm.
released stuff. Yeah, and all of a sudden they won't let Tesla's SUV get
The
any kind of
tax rebate.
tax return because it's 250 pounds too heavy. I mean, too light, when they should be
Should be
welcoming
rewarding, like, yeah, right. The whole
yeah,
thing's efficiency, right?
well, and that means use less batteries. So
Yeah.
that's really what they've done is persecution because he told the truth. So I bought a share of Tesla. I don't have very much money, but I did.
Just to
Anyway,
give him the finger.
that's right. Absolutely. Two of them. At any rate,
No,
all I
it's
can say is that we're talking about a good man. We fell in love. We were really could confide in each other. And, near the end, when he said, well, I said, what if I had not spoken Russian? What if I didn't know? What if? And he said, sweet, I believe that the very heavens themselves, if they folded away, we still would have found each other. And that I believe that. And I became a Christian. I've suffered a lot. And I've had to live overseas where I had to move every 90 days for 13 years. I was homeless practically, but people helped me. But I've never had much. I don't care either. It was worth it. And I've been able to help people. If people have illness, if they want to cancer, if they have a cancer, I've helped a lot of people get over that. I don't want to get arrested, so I can't say much. All right. But we have many ways to cure cancer. We could have cured cancer in the 70s, but it makes so much money. And these
mm-hmm.
cancer palaces, why, if they cured cancer, those palaces, where are all those thousands of people going to go? On all that equipment, when are they going to go tear out down those hospitals? There's no incentive to cure cancer, only to make money. And the whole thing is corrupt to the gills. So we have to take care of each other and love each other. And these corrupt people, they have to be exposed. And that's just the way it is. So join me on Twitter. I'm Judyth at Judyth, Judyth. Okay. And look at my Twitters because I will tell you the truth there. I describe myself as a blunt truth teller. And right away, I got a text. Somebody saying I was a man and I was just pretending to be Judyth.
What?
Yeah.
What a weird criticism.
Oh, yeah. Well, they do things like that. This doesn't matter. The point is people that get to know me, they know. And I have many wonderful, precious friends, and I'm grateful for them. And thank you for letting me speak to you today. God bless you.
Yes, ma'am. And that was hey, welcome on here anytime. You are sharper than 90% of guests I have on here. Seriously, that's I mean,
I've got to be 100%.
that is okay.
I've got to improve.
Well, then we'll have to bump it up from there because I'm not going to give you an easy 100. All right, I'll start you at 90, and then we'll
The
move
reason
up.
I say that is there's this rumor going around that as you get older that you're going to lose some of it. Actually, you can actually keep growing your neurons. You just have to know what to do.
Yeah. Well, I would love to talk to you about everything under the sun. You're an absolutely fascinating woman, and thank you so much. I
Well,
genuinely
thank you. for having me and
Yes, ma'am.
spread this to your friends. You're young. I mean, I'm not going to be here as long as you, God willing, you will be here a long time,
I hope so.
So keep it up.
Yes, ma'am.
Keep fighting for the
Yes,
right.
ma'am.
God's on our side in the end.
Yes, ma'am. Judyth, thank you so much. I will email you this episode. It'll be up this evening, later tonight. I'll put your website, I'll put your Twitter, I'll put all that good stuff in there, and we will schedule another one. I would love to chat.
Okay. God bless.
Thank you so much, Miss Baker.
Take
God
care.
bless everybody. Stay safe. You